The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to this morning's role-play session with your host, Craig Proctor.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about what to do with the leads. And you'll find that generating leads with my system is rather easy once you know what you're doing. Now, you may not believe that right now. I mean, your experience with lead generation, you may think, well, there must not be many buyers and sellers out there, because for you, it's been very difficult for you to generate these buyers and sellers. What you'll find with proper direct response marketing, when we're actually making an offer that people want, and we're making it easy and non-threatening for buyers and sellers to get that information, it is easy. It is easy to create an abundance of leads. So we're going to work with you. Your one-on-one coach is going to work with you to show you how to make that happen. It is important, as you've heard me say before, that we generate more business than we can handle. Why? So we can exercise our power of choice. We all recognize that some buyers are better than other buyers, and some sellers are better than other sellers. So I want you folks to be positioned as the rejector, not the rejected. In other words, we're going to show you now a script that will help you determine the two most important things that you want to know about any buyer or seller. And the two most important things you want to know are motivation and timing. So back in the old days, I spent, I'd spend 20 minutes on the phone with a buyer or seller or longer, and I might have a nice conversation. Many of you guys are having nice conversations. The problem is nothing good comes of it, okay? At the end of the conversation, you don't have an appointment. In fact, you don't really know their motivation and timing. You might know an awful lot about their personal life and how many kids they have, the name of their dog, and all that kind of stuff. But let's face it, if you haven't, at a minimum, determined their motivation and timing, that phone call was a total waste of time. Now, the idea here is, let's say that's true, that I can show you how to generate more leads than you can shake a stick at, okay? And you come to the realization that, holy cow, I couldn't work with all these buyers and sellers, okay? So if that was true for you, if you knew you couldn't work with all the buyers and sellers that have contacted you in the last week or so, what would your mindset be? Here's what you would think. You would be thinking, well, since I can't work with them all, which of the buyers and sellers are the best? Which are the most motivated? Which are the most sincere? Who are the most ready to act buyers and sellers? Those are the ones I choose to spend my time with, because I can't work with them all. So that's the position we need to get you into. Now, with all that being said, it is true that you can generate all the leads. We can show you how to do a really good job of lead generation. But if you don't have this part right, you don't have the what to do and what to say to the leads part down, what you're going to perceive is that the leads are no good. And the truth of the matter is what you're doing is no good. So that's why we dedicate every Thursday to helping you understand how to follow up and exactly what to say and what not to say with prospects. Remember, with my system, 100% of the prospects, like, they're calling you. You're not calling them. So if you've done any cold calling at all in the past, this should be like a walk in the park. This is easy. Cold calling is difficult. When prospects call you, how are you positioned? You'll see when we go through this script, we're making it very clear to the prospect right from the get-go who we are and why we're calling, and the fact that we're returning an inquiry that they made of us. We're returning an inquiry that the prospect made on their own volition. So, again, if anybody's rude to us or we deem they're not a good fit, we're just going to get rid of them. Why? Because we can. Okay, now, you might think, well, that's a little bit of an arrogant attitude. Look, we have to be very, very particular about how we use our time. Okay, if you want to make the big bucks in real estate, you've got to be absolutely ruthless on how you use your time. So when you generate a bunch of leads, here's another reason why you can't be on the phone for 20 minutes. You wouldn't be able to call them all. And when I was figuring out my lead generation way back when, that's what I realized. Very early into this, I realized, well, heck, I can't spend 15 or 20 minutes with each buyer or seller lead on the phone, because I'd only be able to talk to 4 or 5 sellers in an hour. Okay, again, there's no use generating all the leads if we can't get to them. So Over many, many years, I perfected this script that you're looking at right now. We call it the Universal Callback Script, and you'll find it on the coaching website. Andrea, maybe just show everybody again how they find it on the coaching website, because I want everyone to pull this up and to be looking at this as we go through our lesson today. Okay, you go right there to follow-up script, right off the home page, and boom. Now, you can even download this thing, and you'll see a pull-down box there, Andrea. Maybe just show everybody in any language you want. Well, as long as it's English, French, and Spanish. So you can, yeah, you can pull this off in English, French, and Spanish. You should print this thing off. You should print it off, and you should stick it anywhere. That sounds weird. You should place it wherever you make your phone calls. Good morning, Mr. Brash. How are you doing today?
Hey, Craig, I'm doing good. Hey, it's a good comedy show this morning, but you're correct. This universal callback script is a fundamental building block on the system. And everybody needs to print this off and keep a copy anywhere where you would make or take a call. And I'll tell you, even keep a copy in the car, in the jockey box of your car. Keep it in your briefcase. Put it on your bulletin board at your desk, at your cubicle. Have a copy at home close to the phone, because guess what? This is where we want you to take a prospect when the lead is generated and you get them on the phone. Very, very important. In fact, I would say, Craig, that this might be one of the top 3 most important things to learn with the Quantum Leap system. If you can't convert a lead, or at least have the right conversation with the lead, then lead generation is kind of for nothing. Okay, we'll teach you how to generate the lead, but look at this. We're going to teach you how to talk to the lead, the words to use, the questions to ask, the things to dig for, so at the end of this conversation, which, by the way, is less than 5 minutes, you can make the best offer for that person you're talking to. Absolutely a crucial learning point today's lesson.
Okay, so I'm going to be kind of blunt with this, but here's the real truth. What Rick is saying is you can be really, really good with lead generation, but if you suck at what to say to the leads will appear that they're no good. Good quality buyers and sellers will appear to be not qualified at all. Okay, so there's an art to this. There's a science to this, and we're going to show you how to master this, because we don't want you to generate a lot of leads and then come to the false perception that the leads are no good. Hear me on this. If you're getting nowhere with everybody, your problem's in the mirror. Okay, it's not the leads. The problem is you you're not really doing the right things when you follow up with the lead. So anyway, enough on that. Okay, you guys get the importance of this. So we're going to assume for our purposes today that you are generating leads. Even if that's not true yet, let's just assume they're all coming in. Okay, now the script has a left side and a right side, and I'm going to have Andrea just demonstrate that there's a line down the middle. Maybe just draw a little line down the middle there, Andrea. We've got on the right side of the script, we've got the seller follow-up side, and on the left side, we've got the buyer follow-up side. Okay, so if the prospect responds to a seller campaign, you're going to go down the seller side. If the prospect responds to a buyer campaign, you're going to go down the buyer side. Now, for those of you that have tried to memorize other people's scripts and you're a little bit skeptical about this, look, understand I'm giving you one script. You know, I know there's real estate trainers out there and they've got, dozens of scripts. They've got a script for this and a script for that. Hey, I figure if you have one that actually works, you don't need dozens of other scripts. And what you'll find is this script actually works in the real world. Look, the problem for many of you is you've used scripts that sound good on stage, but when you say this stuff to real buyers and sellers, the problem is even though you know what you're supposed to say, the buyers and sellers don't say what they're supposed to say.
Right.
So once you start to use this, you'll understand that this script that I'm about to teach you, that you will master in this program, was created and perfected over 20 years of not only tens of thousands of calls that I made, but Rick Brash and really thousands of members before you. So you're not a guinea pig. Okay, so let's roll up our sleeves and get into this. So let's say it's a seller lead. Whether it's a seller or a buyer, we're going to start with our introduction. So Andrea is going to highlight the intro. Okay, now what do we want to do on the intro? Well, Rick, when the phone rings at your house or your cell phone rings, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking, who on earth is calling me and why are they calling me?
Would everyone agree? Right? Like, that's why we have caller ID. Right? Back in the 1970s, people had answering machines because they didn't want to miss a call. Today, people have caller ID because we don't want to take a call.
Right.
So look, it's important that you're making these phone calls not, hear me on this, not from your real estate office. If I'm calling Rick and on Rick's caller ID on his cell phone or at his home, it says Keller Williams or Remax or Century 21, Rick is probably not going to answer the phone. Just like, you know, when my phone rings here and I can clearly see it's a company calling me or it's somebody I don't know. Okay, so there's going to be a technique that we use to make sure that they answer the phone. So I always made my calls from my house, and I could also hit star 67 before I dialed the phone number, and it had come up on Rick's caller ID as either unknown number or private number. You can try that as well. You might want to try and make the phone calls from your cell phone, but clearly you don't want to make the calls from the Remax office, the Keller Williams office, or the Century 21 office, etc. Okay, so it's very important now that I explain to Rick why I'm calling him. And I've got to get this out all in one mouthful, okay? Because remember, the minute Rick thinks I'm a telemarketer, boom, he tries to get rid of me or he just hangs up in my ear. So watch this. I'm always going to also ask for the person that requested the information. So Rick has visited my landing page or he called into my hotline and he said, this is Rick Brash, here's my contact info. So if Rick's wife answers, I'm going to say, may I speak to Rick? And we'll talk more about how to handle the spouse situation. But let's walk before we can run here. So I'm going to say, hi, may I speak to Rick, please?
Yeah, this is Rick. Who's this?
Hey, Rick. This is Craig Proctor with ABC Realty. And the reason I'm calling is because I received your request for the information you wanted. And I want to let you know that now you can either say I've popped it in the mail if you're mailing it, or I've emailed it, or if you really want to simplify it, how about this? I've sent you the information that you requested. Is that okay? Now, what you're usually met with is thank you. You're met with appreciation. What is Rick really going to say to me when I say, hey, Rick, it's Craig Proctor with ABC Realty, and the reason I'm calling is in response to your request for the costly home seller information or the area home sales report or whatever he requested. Just wanted to let you know we've sent that information out to you, and I hope that's okay. Is he going to get angry with me? Is he going to say, damn you for sending me exactly what I wanted? No, he's going to be appreciative. Now, I'm going to get right into, are you folks planning on making a move in the next 3 to 6 months? Because that is really why we're calling, right? We're not calling, we're really not calling to let the prospect know that we've sent out the information. That is the reason or the excuse I'm giving to the prospect as to why we're calling. Okay, and I'm creating reciprocity. Really, here's what I'm saying. Hey, Rick, it's Craig from ABC Realty, and the reason I'm calling is based on the fact that you called me or you visited my landing page and you requested some stuff, and I'm kind enough, I'm good enough to send that out to you, and I wondered if you folks were planning on making a move in the next 3 to 6 months. Now, if you remember at the Super Conference, I talked about the fact that nobody likes to be sold. We just don't, right? And that's why when we ask question 1, are you folks planning on making a move in the next 3 to 6 months, quite often they say, well, maybe, or we're just thinking about it, or we're not sure. Don't be fooled by that. Okay, does everybody get that? When you ask them, are you folks planning on making a move in the next 3 to 6 months, very often they respond with something that's what I call non-specific. Sometimes they'll outright say no, and sometimes they'll say yes. We'll talk about the golden prospects here in a minute. But I'm just saying most of the time, they're non-specific. So, right. Rick, give us a typical response. So, Rick, I was just wondering if you folks were planning on making a move in the next 3 to 6 months.
I don't know. We're kind of kicking the idea around. We haven't really made any decisions yet.
Okay, now, what you'll find is most people are not very good liars. So that's why I've designed these probing questions so that you and I can get to the truth. Now, I come back with this question. I say, now, Rick, if you were to move, would you be staying in the area or moving out of the area?
Oh, no, we'll stay in the same school district if we decide to move.
Now, you'll notice that that's not a question that Rick can easily answer yes or no to. He can't, right? I'm trying to engage Rick in a conversation, because if I can get him to open up, maybe I can get to the truth. Now, check out question 3. And Rick, if you were to move, when do you think that might be?
Oh, well, I guess I would need to get my place sold first, and then if we found something that really was suitable, the truth is, Craig, we just need another bedroom, so that's really what we're looking for, is something with a bigger bedroom, with another bedroom. So if we find that, we'd probably do something.
Okay, and do you have a realtor to help you when the time is right?
Well, I wouldn't say I have a realtor. There doesn't seem to be a shortage of realtors, and the guy that sold me this house sends me a Christmas card every year, so I'm sure I can find one.
Okay, and would you prefer to buy your next home before putting your home up for sale, or do you want to sell first?
Oh, I've never really thought about that. What would you suggest? I probably would need to sell to free up my cash so I could go out and buy another house.
Okay, and sometimes they don't understand it, so I'll have to dig a little deeper here. And I might say something like this. Well, Rick, would you rather go out there and look around at some houses before you stick a for sale sign on your front lawn, or would you rather know that your house is sold before you go out there and get excited about another house?
I think I'd need to sell first before I could buy. So that would be our first thing to do would be to sell first.
Okay, now this is a vitally important question we ask, because like a dummy earlier in my career, I would never ask the seller whether they prefer to buy first or sell first. I would just assume, because they responded to a seller campaign, that they must be a sell first buyer. And Rick in this situation is. But Rick, what if you answered that question a different way? What if I said, do you prefer to buy first or sell first? And you said, well, actually, I want to look around and buy first.
Yeah, which is really common, by the way. That's a really common answer. I don't want to do anything until I see what's available right now where I want to live. Really common.
Okay, so that is very common. Now, if I did not ask that question, Rick, are you a buy first guy or a sell first guy? I would probably just guess at what offer to make. And
right.
If Rick is a buy first guy, and I try to jam in my sell first offer, I may do a wonderful job with the offer, but here's the problem. It doesn't fit with where his head is at. It's a good offer, but it's not where Rick's head's at, because he's a buy first guy.
Right.
Okay, now, if I've determined that Rick is going to be listing his house in the next couple of weeks, okay, and if he says he's a sell first guy, like he originally did, I need to make Rick an offer. Now, our offer, the offer that we make sellers, must be a universal offer. What's a universal offer? It's something that all sellers want. I want everyone to think about that, right? Do you want to offer something that a few sellers want? Or do you want to offer something that every motivated seller that hears this offer, they all want it and they all say yes? So let's have a look at this offer. I say, Rick, would you like a free market evaluation to determine what your home would sell for? Also, I can give you tips on what to do and what not to do to sell your home for the most amount of money, and we can go over all the various closing costs you'll incur so you'll know exactly how much you're going to have left in your pocket after all expenses. It's free of charge and you're never obligated to do anything. Does that sound helpful? And then we set a time to get together. Now, remember what I said at the super conference back in the 1990s. My big offer to a seller was, hey, do you want to know what your house is worth? And back then, that was a pretty good offer to make because sellers had no clue as to what was happening with area home sales. Today, I think we'd all agree, because everything's on the internet, sometimes the seller knows more about what's going on in their neighborhood than you and I do.
Yeah.
So if that's your big offer to sellers, would you like a free market evaluation? Unfortunately, as you found out, that offer that you make about a free market evaluation often falls on deaf ears.
Deaf ears, yeah.
Right. People are just like, you know what, Rick, thanks, but no thanks. I already know what my home is worth. That's why we have to beef up this offer. The sell-first offer is so good that there's something for every seller. That's what I tried to do, is I tried to laundry list something that every seller would see some value in. And I particularly like the offer to give them tips on what to do and what not to do to sell their home for the most amount of money. This is something they often ask us anyway, something we all do, but we don't talk about. And I think we'd all agree to give them tips on what to do and what not to do to sell their home for the most amount of money does require you and I to look at their home, right? It requires us actually getting in the front door, which is what we want to do. And then what other kinds of questions do sellers ask us? They often ask us, well, what are the closing costs? They might ask about timing. So you can add to this whatever you want, but this gives you an idea of what a good offer looks like. I might want to say this. So let's go from the top. Rick, would you like a free market evaluation to determine what your home would sell for? Also, I can give you some tips on what to do and what not to do to sell your home for the most amount of money. And we could go over all the various closing costs you're going to incur, so you'll know exactly what you're going to have left with in your pocket after all the expenses. Okay, now I could add this. We could also talk about timing and answer any of the other questions that you have, Rick. It's absolutely free of charge, and you're obligated to do nothing. Does that sound like it might be helpful? Rick says yes, and I say, when's a good time for us to get together, days or evenings?
Now, Craig, we should mention here why that last statement you made is so important. With Craig's offer, you'll notice what he did at the end there. He completely removed the cost and the obligation factor. Now that, for a stranger on the other end of the line, is a big deal. Because what do they think? Oh, it's a salesman. He's just trying to sell me something. He's just trying to rope me into something. Wrong. We're completely removing that from the equation. And again, we keep the prospect in this very comfortable, pliable mode. They agree, and we create the listing presentation from an offer. Very important.
Okay, now let's say that Rick, when I asked him if he wants to buy first or sell first, Rick said, well, actually, I don't want to list my home until I find the perfect home. I don't need to sell, right? They say that quite often. I don't have to sell, but the commute is killing me, and I want to get a little closer to work. But before we pull the trigger and we list our home for sale, we'd like to look around and find something first. Well, that would tell my brain that I shouldn't make the sell first offer because that's not where the prospect's head is at. What I need to do is I need to make them an offer that would interest them. Rick, in this case, is telling me he's a buy first guy. So what is a universal offer for buyers? Rick, would you like me to email you daily updates of all the homes that match your home buying criteria from all the different real estate companies? My list includes bank foreclosures, company-owned properties, and distressed sales. It's a free service, and of course, you're never obligated to buy a home. Would that interest you? What do you think they say 90% of the time? They say yes. Now, once they opt in, you're making a universal offer. What's a universal offer? You're offering buyers something that every buyer wants. You say, would you like that? And 90% of them say yes. Now, we're going to then come back with, well, when would be a good time for us to get together? For about 20 minutes so we can take down exactly what we're looking for. Now, Rick, try to fight me on that.
I don't know, Craig. I'm pretty busy. Could I just tell you right now over the phone what my wife and I are looking for?
Okay, that's called an objection. We're going to teach you folks all the major objections, but we're also going to show you how to handle them. Question, would you folks all be more confident on the phone if you not only knew what the objections were, there's not many of them, there's about 8 or 9 of them, and if you knew exactly how to handle them? So that's a very common objection. Rick is saying basically, well, why do we need to meet? Can't I just tell you over the phone what I'm looking for? Can't I just email you my criteria? Now, of course, as realtors, we all know why we want them to meet, because we want to present them our VIP buyer presentation and compel them to sign a 1-year exclusive buyer agency agreement. We can't do that over the phone, or at least it's more difficult. So I'm going to say to Rick, when he says, can't I just email you, or can't I just tell you over the phone what I'm looking for, here's what I say. Rick, I want to do a good job for you. Rather than me emailing you dozens of homes which may or may not match what you're looking for, or worse, missing out on the perfect one, if we can get together for about 15 or 20 minutes, I can take down exactly what you're looking for, and that way you'll be getting only homes that are a perfect match emailed to you every day. When do you think would be a good time for us to get together, days or evenings? Try to fight me again, Rick.
Evenings would be best, but I just have to clear this with my wife and see when she's available.
Perfect. That's a very common objection, right? Anyone that's married has used this before, right? Blame the spouse. Yeah, I'd love to do that, but I got to check with my wife. Or sometimes they'll use work as an excuse. They'll say, well, I'd love to meet with you, but I got to check my work schedule. So I've got your phone number. Why don't I call you back? Okay. Now, we have to give Rick the benefit of the doubt here. He's saying, Craig, I'd love to meet with you, but I got to check with my wife first. So that's an objection. Now, I'm going to come back with a very reasonable solution to Rick's problem. Rick is saying he'd like to meet with me, but he's got to speak to his wife first. So here's what I say. Well, Rick, since we're both on the phone right now, why don't we at least set up a tentative time to get together? And if when you talk to your wife, that time doesn't work, just give me a call back and we can change the time. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow night at 7 p.m.
Beautiful.
Now, if Rick fights me on this again, we have to start thinking, is Rick sincere? Or is he the type of prospect that no matter what I say, no matter how many times I reasonably handle his concerns, he's just going to continue to invent another objection? So remember, you're all going to be in this situation in very short order where you've got too many leads. So I want you to all imagine that right now. I know it's not true for you, but imagine that. Imagine you've got a big pile of buyer leads and seller leads. Understand that the more Rick fights me, the more I don't want him.
Correct.
Right? Because I've got all these other leads. So in a way, I would appreciate it. If Rick's a jerk, I'd rather know right away. I'd rather know in the first 30 seconds, the first minute of this phone call, because I don't have time to work with everybody. So the harder he fights me, if it's objection after objection, or if he's rude to me, or if I've determined through the questions I've asked him that he's just not motivated, or his timing is way off, then the answer is get the heck off the phone and call the next person.
Move on. That's right.
And that is different than what other trainers teach. Here's what other trainers want you to believe. They want you to believe that if you've got a silver tongue, that if you say the right things, that you could magically take people, buyers and sellers, that are not even motivated, and you could get them to be motivated. Boulder Dash. Not true. There is no script in the world that's going to create motivation where motivation does not exist. That's not the job of my script. In fact, no script can accomplish that. The job of my script, the universal callback script, is to help you simply determine in 3 minutes or less whether they are motivated and what their timing is.
Correct.
Now, at the end of this, through the questions you ask them, these probing questions, you will in fact determine whether they are motivated, and you will determine their timing. And you're going to be able to slot every prospect into one of three categories. So let's talk about the three categories that you're going to slot them into at the end of the 3 or 4 minute conversation. If they answer the questions in the best way possible, meaning that you've determined they're really motivated and their timing is now, of course, you're going to articulate one of the offers, depending on whether they're a buy first or a sell first. Now, obviously, if they're a renter, then they've got nothing to sell, and you're going to go right to the buy first offer. But if they own a home, they own a house, you've always got to be thinking, regardless of whether they responded to one of your buyer campaigns or your seller campaigns, an important question to ask is, do you own? If you own your own home, we've always got to consider that even if they responded to a buyer campaign, they may want to sell first. Yep. So we're not going to communicate the buy first offer. We're going to communicate the sell first offer. Now, I wish we lived in a world where the vast majority of buyers and sellers we speak to all fall into category number one. They're ready to buy or sell now. But you already know that's not true. Every single one of you have been in real estate long enough, you've talked to enough prospects to realize that the vast majority of buyers and sellers you speak to represent future business. They're not going to buy or sell today. They might be doing something 3 months or 6 months down the road. Now, this is truly the Achilles heel for most realtors. Okay, we would all agree, on the surface, we can all agree that the majority of buyers and sellers that you're ever going to talk to, as long as you're a real estate agent, they're going to represent future business. That doesn't mean they're a bad buyer or seller. It just means they're not ready to buy or sell.
Right.
But if you don't have a really good follow-up system, then what you're really telling the world is that the majority of buyers and sellers you speak to, you're just not going to do a very good job with them. And when they're ready to buy or sell, they're probably going to forget about you, and they're just going to use one of your competitors. So since we realize that the majority of people we talk to are not ready yet, but they're ready down the road, we've got to have a really good follow-up plan. So guess what I did? I invented a really, really, really good follow-up plan. So if they're 3 months or 6 months out, I'm going to go to question number 6. Would it be okay if I followed up with you at a later time? Well, what if the prospect says, no, go away and never call me again? Well, I'm going to respect that, and I'm probably never going to call them again. Why? Because I have a big pile of other leads of people that do want to be followed up with. Now, I call this permission marketing. You know, a lot of realtors don't do that. They just follow up. But I believe that, let's say, hey, Rick, would it be okay if I followed up with you at a later time? And if Rick says yes, then I'm going to ask him, well, when do you think would be a good time for me to call you back? And Rick will tell me a time. And then whatever time frame Rick gives me, I'm going to cut it in half. Well, why would I cut it in half? Because prospects, as you already know, have a tendency to arbitrarily tell us, the salespeople, a time frame that's longer than it really is.
Yep.
Right? Because they don't want to be pressured. So if Rick tells me, if I say, hey, Rick, would it be okay if I followed up at a later time? And Rick said yes. And then I said, well, Rick, when would be a good time for me to call you back? And he says 6 months. I'm going to call him back in 3 months. And then I'm going to go right to the bottom right-hand corner. If you can highlight Market Watch newsletter, please, Andrea. I'm then going to say, well, now, Rick, would you like to receive my free monthly newsletter to keep you in touch with what's happening in the marketplace? Now, if he says yes, that's another good sign. So Rick said, yes, you can follow up with me, and yes, you can receive the newsletter. Now, at the Super Conference, we talked about the newsletter. Every real estate agent realizes that they should have a strong follow-up system because of the fact that most of the people you talk to are going to fall into this category of future business. Every real estate agent knows they should have a really good newsletter, but hardly any real estate agent even has a bad newsletter. You see, if we're going to send a newsletter, we want to make sure that the stuff in the newsletter is of interest to the buyers or sellers, because it would be a waste of time to send a newsletter out that was full of recipes and things that don't actually interest buyers or sellers, because they would just throw it in the garbage can. So none of us want to go through the expense and the effort of creating a boring, crummy newsletter that just gets thrown into the trash. So what I've designed for you is a good newsletter, a newsletter that prospects actually would be interested in receiving. And I've created 12 issues. Issue 1 through 12. Okay, now if you've got a prospect that's 13 or 14 months out, no worries. You can send them issue 1. There it is right there on your screen. You can send issue 1 again on month 13. Now, you'll notice that the newsletter offers information that buyers and sellers are actually interested in. What would be better than getting the prospect to raise their hand and contact you once is to get them to contact you again and again and again. And every time they contact you, guess what? Now you've got another reason or excuse to call them back and requalify them. So if we can make, can you make that bigger, Andrea, please?
Give me just 1 second.
We know the prospects are into information, right? Because that's why they contacted you in the first place. So you can see 7 things you must know before putting your home up for sale. So this newsletter goes at the seller prospect that's in your database, and they might have said, you know what, I'm 6 months out or I'm 12 months out. You're sending them the newsletter every month, and you're calling them in half the time. And we're going to teach you other things that you can use with follow-up. For example, the gold plan. Well, we talked about that briefly at the Super Conference. What is the gold plan? If you recall from the conference, I said that the very best prospects are very upfront and vocal about their intentions. So when you say, are you folks planning on making a move in the next 3 to 6 months? They say, funny you called, Rick, because we're going through a divorce, and we've got to get our house up for sale in the next couple of weeks. Or, we've bought new construction. We're not ready to list our home now, Rick, but in 6 months, we are ready to list our home. Or we've been transferred, and we need to be to Seattle in the fall. Now, I always got buyers and sellers like that. The problem is I didn't do a very good job of following up with them, and I would lose those prospects to my competitors. And one day it hit me like a 2x4 on the head that I was kind of dumb for treating all future prospects exactly the same. Does everybody get this? The buyer-seller that said, well, I don't know, we're just kind of thinking about it, we're not sure, they would get my newsletter, and I'd call them in half the time, and they'd get my voice broadcast. But I was also using that same system for buyers or sellers that were golden prospects, buyers and sellers that were very upfront and vocal with their intentions, that would say things like, hey, we are absolutely 100% moving. We've got to be in Seattle in September, and we're going to be listing our house in a couple months. I decided I could spend a little bit more time, money, and energy on the golden prospects. So I created the Gold Plan follow-up system, which all of you will get access to, and I will train you on how to use this stuff. So if you just follow exactly how we lay this out, you'll find that this is really easy. Now, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you just copy exactly what we've created? Well, here's the problem. People that get into real estate are usually creative people. We're entrepreneurial. That's what attracted you to the real estate business in the first place, is you don't want to have a boss. You want to do things your own way. So, you know, it's kind of silly to pay us to coach you, but then not exactly do what we're suggesting. Remember, you're not the guinea pig with this program. You've heard us say many times, if you simply copy, you will succeed. And you know, you'll find that our top members are really good copiers. So if you just you know, and sometimes it's a control thing. It's like, hey, you know what, I want to do it my own way. But if you just would you know, ask the questions and follow exactly the way we lay everything out, especially, you know, the marketing and the script, you'll find that this is easy. Just remember, my way is the easy way. All you have to do is just copy exactly what we've got laid out. Okay, so Rick and I are going to do a role play right from the top, okay, without me interrupting myself. We're going to go right from the top, Rick, and show everybody what this actually sounds like. And then we're going to take some questions, because we got a whack of questions, and you can type your questions into the chat, and you can also ask us some audio questions. If we have time, maybe we'll even do a role play or two with you. I mean, that's what we normally do on these sessions, is we role play with you, right. And you know, we can either be the buyer or seller, and you can be the realtor, or the other way around. We can do it either way. So let's go right from the top, Rick.
Okay, before we do this, Craig, I want everyone to make note of two things. When you listen to Craig do this, make note of two things. Number one, I want you to listen closely to Craig's articulation. Okay, you're going to be able to understand every word Craig says right into the point, up to the point where he hangs up the phone. The second thing is, I want to see if you can tell the difference between what Craig's going to do and what a typical cold calling telemarketer does, because we do not want to sound like a telemarketer. And when Craig's done, I'm going to tell you the big mistake a lot of our members make to make themselves sound like a telemarketer when they're learning the script. But listen in first, and just listen to the way Craig does this. Okay, let's go, Craig.
All right. First of all, Rick, what campaign, what ad did you respond to? What information did you request?
Okay, let's do something that most of our members are working on right now. Let's do a buyer campaign for a list of distressed properties or a list of foreclosures, and it was a web lead.
Okay, great. So I'm going down the left-hand side. So, ring, ring. Hi, may I speak to Rick, please?
Yeah, this is Rick. Who's this?
Hey, Rick. It's Craig Proctor here from ABC Realty. The reason I'm calling is because I received a request for the distress sale and bank foreclosure list. Just wanted to let you know I've sent that information out to you. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, that's that website thing I was on yesterday?
Correct. I wondered if you folks were planning on making a move in the next 3 months.
Yeah, it's definitely something we've moved from the back burner to the front burner. We need to get this done, so yeah, we're looking.
And Rick, do you currently rent or do you own your own home?
No, I just rent this apartment.
Okay, and are you planning on staying in the area or are you planning on moving out of the area?
Well, I want to be able to walk to the train station, so we're trying to find a place within walking distance of that.
And if you were to move, when do you think that might be, Rick?
Well, when I find a good deal. I'm really focused on finding a good deal for my wife and I.
And do you have a real estate agent to help you when the time is right?
I wouldn't say I have an agent. The company that transferred me here said they have somebody I can talk to, but I haven't spoken with them yet. So I guess my answer to your question would be no.
Would you like me to email you daily updates of all the homes that match your home buying criteria from all the different real estate companies? My list includes any bank foreclosures, company-owned properties, and distress sales. It's a free service, and of course, you're never obligated to buy a home. Do you think that would interest you?
Yeah, that's what I signed up for on your website there.
Well, what I'm sending you now is a daily snapshot of what's listed for sale now. What I'd like to offer you is going forward getting those same daily updates. So as soon as a bank foreclosure or a distress sale comes on the market, you'll immediately get it. It's a free service, and of course, you're never obligated to do anything. Would that interest you?
Yeah, it would. I'm interested in a foreclosure because a friend of mine got one, and he got a smoking deal. That's what I'm trying to do. So yeah, that would be good.
So Rick, when could we get together for about 20 minutes so I could take down exactly what you're looking for?
Well, I tell you, Craig, I'm a real busy guy. I'm quite confident I can tell you right now what it is we're looking for.
Well, Rick, I'm sure you've got a really great idea as to what you're looking for, and I'd like to have that same great understanding. So if we could get together for about 20 minutes, I'd be able to do a much better job for you because I'd know exactly what you're looking for, and that way I could, rather than sending you dozens of homes every day that don't match what you're looking for, or even worse, missing out on the perfect one, I would know exactly what you're looking for, and I'd be able to send you just the ones every day that match your criteria. So when would be a good time, do you think, to get together for 20 minutes?
Does my wife need to be there?
Yeah, it would be better because obviously she's going to have a say in this.
Okay, so it sounds good. I just have to clear this with her because her work schedule and mine don't always jive together. So I've got your number. What I'll do, I'll find out from her when she's available, and I'll call you back.
Well, why don't we do this, Rick, since we're both busy and we're on the phone today. Why don't we at least set up a tentative time to meet? And if when you talk to your wife that time doesn't work, just give me a call back and we can change it. So when's your wife usually home? What's better for you, days or evenings?
Well, it would have to be evenings, but she has to work 2 evenings a week, and I just got to figure out which 2 she's working this week.
Okay. Well, why don't we take a stab at this and set it up for maybe I don't know, next Tuesday at 7 p.m. at your place?
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. And if you find out she's working that evening, give me a call back, and we can switch it to Monday.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
Great. Okay. So that's basically what this looks like, folks. So let's. You want to talk about what a telemarketer sounds like, Rick? While you're doing that, I'm going to look at some of the chat questions.
All right. So you'll notice when Craig got me on the phone, the first question he didn't ask me was, "Hey, how are you today?" Now, how many of you have been sitting having dinner? The phone rings. It's the telemarketer raising funds for the AIDS Foundation or the Retired Firefighters Foundation, and the first thing they say is, "Hey, how are you tonight? And oh, by the way, thank you for last year's contribution." And boom, you go into this blocked position. You just don't want to be bothered by a telemarketer anymore. You completely shut down, and you get off the phone as quickly as you can. There is no resemblance to what Craig did with me to what a telemarketer does when they get on the phone. That's the first thing. The second thing I pointed out before we started was, how many of you had a tough time understanding what Craig was saying? Now, this is a common denominator as we learn the script. We have a tendency to race through it at 200 miles an hour. Now, you can't do that. If the prospect doesn't understand what you're saying, you're going to have a really tough time communicating with the prospect. Now, I'll tell you when this really happens, the adrenaline starts to pump when all of a sudden it looks like we've got a live one on the phone that wants to meet. You speed up even more. So you have to consciously slow down, enunciate, articulate the words, listen to the answers, and make a very clear and concise offer that the prospect on the phone understands. Now think about this. It's a telephone. It's not always the clearest connection. If there's even a burp in the quality of the phone line and they don't understand exactly what you're saying, it's tough to book an appointment. It's tough to get your offer into their brain so they understand it. So my rule is always slow down when you talk to a prospect. Think about articulation. Okay, the prospect needs to understand every word you're saying and paint a clear picture in their mind of what it is you're offering. With a buyer, the clear offer for a buyer is what? They want access to the best deal in the marketplace for the family, and they want access to a selection of them. And that's the offer that Craig just made me. For a seller, well, what does a seller want before they list their home for sale? They want the right information. They want a buyer, but to move forward with the decision of listing their home, they want to know how much is their home worth and how much are homes just like theirs selling in the neighborhood. You need to clearly enunciate those things to the buyer or the seller to get them to agree to get together with you. And you'll find as we do the role play on Thursdays that, you know, one of the things I'll constantly tell you is slow down a little bit. Okay, it's not a race. We're not racing through this at 200 miles an hour to get to the next one. We have a short, concise, articulate conversation that we want to have, that we want to control, and we want to get to the point of making an offer. And put this in your notes today. This is an offer-based conversation you're going to have. Everybody who uses the universal callback script wants to get to the point of making one of those three offers every single time. Now, there will be times when, as Craig said earlier, you get hung up on, when it's just not convenient for the person to talk to. You've called the prospect back and they're riding the bus home from work, okay? Not the best time to have a conversation with someone. You've got the prospect on the phone and they're tearing down the freeway, not the best time to have a conversation. So you have to listen to those things. But when you get the prospect on the phone, they clearly have to understand you. They have to really have a clear picture in their mind of what the offer is, and then we have to make it easy for them to take advantage of your offer. And Craig did all that in his role play with me just a minute ago. So tomorrow, when this webinar is uploaded to the coaching website, this is a good one to download and listen to over and over and over again. Along with, in the call deck, eventually you'll do a call with Craig called Why Follow-Up is Everything. That is one of our most important coaching calls that we do. It's either call 4 or call 5, I can't remember. That's another one that you want to download and listen to over and over and over again. We want you to get this follow-up procedure really well set in your business. It becomes a system and a formula, something you do with the rinse and repeat mentality, because at the end of this, one of three things happens. You have programmed this prospect for business down the road, you've created an appointment with the prospect because they are ready to go, or this prospect just wasn't a fit, and in fact, you've eliminated them from your system. Those three things, one of those three things will happen.
Okay, Rick, we've got some really fantastic questions here, so I'm excited. And here's how this works. The more you know about this, the more questions you have, and we're into a little deeper waters. So we've got some great questions. Now, also, we have a few people that want to role play with us. So I'm going to answer the questions very, very quickly. And then Elizabeth Kennedy would like to role play. So Elizabeth, get ready, because I'm going to role play with you before we finish up here. But before we get to Elizabeth, let me do a rapid fire here with some of the questions that we have, and I'll give you the answer. Okay, so Valmar says he sent out 6,000 postcards. He didn't get a response. Well, I would test the, I would test different ads, and sometimes 5,000 or 6,000 postcards aren't even enough to really determine whether the thing works or not, Valmar. But tomorrow, on our ad clinic, here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow, I am going to take everybody through the Reality software program. Remember, that's the program that interfaces with your MLS. And I'm going to show you how to use that program. That's tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time. I'm going to show you how to interface with your MLS, okay, and how to select your target market and how to use this, this software program when you go out to do a CMA, how to differentiate yourself, how to know what's going on with your competition. Anyway, we'll get into all of that tomorrow. I'm also going to take you through the ad generator tomorrow. In other words, before I can ask you to run my ads, you need to understand how to do this properly. So I'm going to take you through the coaching website and show you how to access all the ads. I'm going to show you how to access the classifieds, the editorial, the USP ads. We'll quickly do that. And if we have some time, Andrea, we'll look at some ads. You can get some ads ready in case we have some extra time at the end, and we'll look at some good examples of what your ad should look like. Okay, so let's go down to questions. Okay, Hugo says, hey, Craig, if you make a buy first offer to someone and they want to sell their home as well, would you still take them through your listing presentation? Well, yes. If Rick said he's a buy first guy, and I always want to make the appointment, the buyer appointment at his home. Why? Because maybe I can get the listing signed at the exact same time. If it's a first-time buyer, it's an extra hoop I jump the first-time buyers through. I, on purpose, make them come to my office. But if the prospect owns a house, even though they're a buy-first prospect, I always want to make that appointment at their home, as you've indicated here, Hugo, because maybe I can get the listing signed at the same time. Now, this is a little bit advanced maybe for you, but here's what I would do. If I was talking, let's go back to the buy first offer. Okay, Andrea, if you can just circle that, the buy first offer. Let's say I'm talking to Rick, and I know that Rick owns a house, but he says he'd rather look around at houses before he lists his home for sale. Then he's a buy first guy, right? I'm not going to go down to the seller offer. However, I could combine the two offers. So check this out. I could combine the two offers and make a hybrid offer that's really awesome. I could say to Rick, hey, Rick, would you like me to email you daily updates of all the homes that match your home buying criteria from all the real estate companies? Our list includes bank foreclosures, company-owned properties, and distress sales. It's a free service, and you're never obligated to buy a home. And I also could give you a free market evaluation to determine what your home would sell for, and give you tips on what to do and what not to do to sell your home for the most amount of money. And we could go over all the closing costs so you know exactly what you have left in your pocket. It's absolutely free of charge and obligates you to do nothing. Does that sound like it might be helpful? When's a good time for us to get together? So you can see I combined the offer. Yeah.
That's a great offer.
I led with the buyer offer because that's what he wants to do first. He's a buy first guy, but because he has a house to sell, I segue right into the seller offer, so it's a dual offer.
Okay, here's a very valuable point about that offer. If you start to run marketing for properties in the sort of the move up or the second home category of your market, guess who's going to respond to your marketing? People who need to sell first before they can buy. And that's where Craig had my marketing goal when I was working through this program. He said, Rick, work the move-up market. Invariably, you'll end up talking to someone who needs to list as well as buy, and I got really good at both making that offer and going over and actually listing the home and also coming away with a buyer contract. Okay, that's the prospect that the marketing is going to deliver to you over and over and over again. So learn that two-in-one offer. It's very important.
Yep, and like Rick said, if they're a sell first person, but they want to buy another home, you would lead with the seller offer, but you would combine the buyer offer. Okay,
right.
Here's a question from Sergio. This is a great question. Sergio says, look, one of the comments I come across again and again and again when I ask a seller prospect if they'd like a home evaluation is, as I indicated earlier, they say, I already know. I already know what my house is worth. I have a pretty good idea. I've already looked on Trulia. I've looked on Zillow. I've got a good idea already of what my house is worth, so thanks but no thanks. And Sergio, that's what I said earlier. That's why your big offer to sellers can't just be a home evaluation. It can't be that anymore. That worked for Rick and I in the 1990s. It doesn't work anymore on its own. It can't be the whole offer. Now, is having a real estate agent coming over to the home and giving an accurate assessment, does that have any value? Yes, it probably has some value, but it can't be the entire offer.
Right.
And that's why we go to the other things that we talked about a minute ago. We talked about, yeah, we up it. We add on. We say we can give you tips on what to do and what not to do to prepare your home for sale. Okay, Zillow doesn't do that. Trulio doesn't do that, right? We can talk about all the expenses, okay, all the costs involved in selling your home, and do a net sheet, because you guys already do that anyway. So tell them about that. We'll let you know exactly what you're going to net in your pocket. We could talk about timing and when's a good time to do this, and answer any of the other questions you have. It's absolutely free of charge, and you're under no obligation, okay? Trulia and Zillow, they don't do that, okay? So absolutely, we have to set ourselves apart from every other offer that's out there. We've got to make our offer sound better, okay? All-encompassing.
Right.
I like that word, all-encompassing.
Yep.
Okay. Stephen Chen says, okay, how about this, though, Craig and Rick? What if the buyer is from out of town? Now what? Now what do you do? Okay, so here's the answer. Stephen, if the buyer is coming into town in the next couple weeks, you just do exactly what we showed you to do here. If the buyer says, well, I'm not going to be coming into your marketplace for a couple months, then we're going to teach you how to do the buyer presentation right over the telephone. Okay, you can do a webinar just like we're doing now. You can go from slide to slide to slide, and we can find out whether this person's going to be loyal to you right now before you spend months and months following up with them and find out that they come into town and leave you behind. We're looking for a commitment. Okay, so a lot of our coaching members work in resort areas. This is not unusual. If you're in certain parts of Arizona or California or especially Florida, many of your buyers are coming from out of state. So how do we do that? We're going to teach you how to do this over the phone or on a webinar. Now, if they're coming in the next couple of weeks, you're not going to change anything. You're just going to you just have them come into your office and you're going to meet them just like you normally would meet a local buyer. So it's their time frame that's going to dictate how you're going to go about what your strategy is going to be with that particular buyer. Okay.
That's a great question. I like that question, Craig. Stephen, let me just tell you quickly my experience. I live in a city, Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and Calgary has more head offices than any other city in the country of Canada. So it's very, very usual for us to get a lead from somebody who's been transferred to head office in Calgary, but guess what? They aren't coming for 3 months. They won't be out to look at houses for 3 months. So we had to create a system to look after those people who lived out of town. And as Craig said, we're going to teach you that system. We're going to show you exactly what to do. But suffice it to say this, when they come to town, where does that day start? That day starts in your office where you meet them. You may do the buyer's presentation there, but you solidify your relationship when they get to town, and we're going to teach you how to do that. I got really good at that. It's not difficult. It's common sense and logic, all right? So we're going to teach you how to do that.
So, Rick, are you saying that when the buyer comes to Calgary, you're not running them all over Hell's Half Acre before you ask for a commitment?
Craig, let me tell you something. I don't run anybody all over Hell's Half Acre, not even my clients. Because guess what, Craig? You taught me that I never, ever have to do that. So, yes, I am saying that.
So what we're going to show you here, bottom line, is we're going to show you how to work with a whole bunch of buyers without you having to do too much. We're going to show you a system where the buyers are doing most of the work. And here's the key. The buyers prefer it. The buyers like it that way. We're going to get the buyers to do most of the work, and the buyers are going to think it's their idea. They're going to love this. Look, here's the question. Rick, remember when I said this to you? I said, Rick, how many buyers could you work with if it had very little to do with you?
Well, guess what? In the old days, Craig, with 3 buyers, I am running all week to keep up. Now, on your system, I can probably have a dozen files of ready-to-buy, looking hard for a home buyers, and hardly spend any time with them at all and do a better job for them than I ever did before. And I learned that from you.
Okay,
and,
next question is from Brad. I got to get through all these. Next question is from Brad. I understand the importance of the 5-minute callback time frame. However, what do you do, Craig and Rick, if the lead comes in late at night? Is it still good to call them or better to wait until the next morning? Look, Brad, my system is about you having a life, okay? I want all of you to generate enough business that you can shut this cell phone off for a bit and have dinner. You can go to bed at 10 o'clock at night and not have to worry about calling people that contact you at 10:30.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in a perfect world, yeah, we call them back as soon as possible. We don't want to live our life that way. Okay.
Right.
So
right.
The key here is, yes, if you can call them back within 5 or 10 minutes, that's desirable, right? But we don't want to live our life that way, that we have to be on call 24/7. So that's what's great about this system. And remember, with a lot of our advertising, Brad, the buyers and sellers don't even know they're calling a real estate agent. Quite often,
Craig,
they'll say that to you, Rick, right? They'll say, well, hey, I didn't even know this was coming from an agent.
Right.
That's
and
not so much an objection, it's an observation.
Well, the reason that happens, guys, is let's be clear on that. The reason that happens is the vast majority of marketing we're having you start with in the Quantum Leap system is from a less branded perspective. So our name, our brokerage, our designation isn't the theme of the ad as it is typically. Ours is an information-based ad. We call them back, and then they discover, oh, this is coming from a realtor. The other thing, Craig, we should mention is, you know, you get a call at 10:30 at night. A lead is generated at 10:30 at night. Well, I ain't calling anybody back at 10:30 at night. But, Craig, tell everybody how you would set aside time in your schedule 2 or 3 days a week to make sure all of the calls were made to the lead generation that you created.
Okay, so here's a shocker for most of you, but what you believe is making the phone calls is not really the highest priority thing, and that going out on the listing appointments and the buyer appointments, that's where the money is. Okay, but I realize, you ready for this? Everyone's sitting down? I can make more money on the phone setting up the appointments versus running around out on the appointments. That's right. So I created a perfect week. So Monday between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. right after dinner, and on Thursday night between 7 and 9 p.m., and on Saturday morning between 11 and 1, I scheduled appointments with me to sit down and call back the leads. Some of the calls I was making were to brand new prospects that had contacted me, over the last couple of days, and other phone calls I was making during those 2-hour time blocks were to prospects I'd spoken to before, once or twice or 3 times before, people that I was following up on. I want all of you to do that.
Right.
I want you to treat following up the leads just like if it was a listing appointment. Now, if you don't believe my math on this, think about this. Let's say that I had someone else making the calls for me, because that's what you're all tempted to do. You don't think this is a rainmaker activity, so you're tempted, hear me on this, to delegate this. Right? Many of you, you're thinking, well, I don't want to sit on the phone and call these people back. And maybe your experience with calling people back has been a negative experience because you were rejected and you don't like cold calling. Well, remember, this is not cold calling. In fact, if you've done any cold calling, this is easy. You're returning inquiries that a prospect's made. These are warm calls, not cold calls.
Right.
So I want you to make the calls. I want you every Thursday on these webinars so we can show you how to master the universal callback script. Besides, how could you hire somebody to make these calls when you're not good at it? It would be impossible for you to train somebody else how to master the universal callback script if you haven't mastered the universal callback script.
Right.
Now, right at the end of my real estate career, I was the one calling back the leads. Now, what I would do is I would cherry pick the best buyer appointments and listing appointments for me. So the best, most motivated person, the person that you can count on the most, is you. You need to be calling these back. Okay, you'll take the A appointments yourself, and if you've got a licensed agent that works with you, an outside sales agent, you can give them the B leads or the C leads. But let's say that I book all these appointments for myself. So tonight, if I book, how many listing appointments could I book tonight? Maybe one at 6 o'clock, maybe one at 7 o'clock, maybe, how many listings could I take on an evening? Maybe 2, right? Maybe 3 if I'm a rock star. But how many listing appointments or buyer appointments could I set up in that 2 or 3 hour period? Well, being good at this, which I am, I could set up 6 or 7 or 8 appointments. I could make more money not going out on the appointments. Does everybody get that? Okay, I just want to open your mind to this because this is usually something that you want to delegate. And I'm saying I made more money making the phone calls than going out and meeting with the buyers and sellers. It was easy for me to find agents to go do that because that's what agents want to do. They want to go, show houses and meet with sellers. It was easy for me to run ads and say, hey, come over and work with the Craig Proctor team. Not only will I supply you leads, they didn't even get leads. They got appointments. I called the leads, and my licensed agents got the appointments. Now, remember, I wasn't a broker. I was just a sales agent working in the broker's office. Okay, so quite a few questions here about where to find the newsletter. Andrea, can you show everybody again where to find the newsletter templates?
Let's remind everybody of this too, Craig. So the official designation of the call maker on your team in your real estate business, which probably is you right now, is what we call ISA, Inside Sales Agent. And Craig just threw a nugget out there that I want everybody to write in their notes. Do not delegate the ISA duties. And the reason is, until you're really, really good at this, you can't teach someone else to be really, really good at this. Here's what will happen. You'll not enjoy making these calls. It'll feel tedious. It'll feel heavy. Because you don't do enough of it, you don't get really good with the script, and the complaints will start. But you know it has to be done, so you bring somebody into your organization who has good phone skills. And you say, here's what I want you to do. Learn this script. Call all these people. And a little bit of time will go on. You'll spend time with that person. They might even come on the odd call with Craig and I, or James and Craig. And guess what they've learned? They've learned all of your bad habits. So that link in the chain is the weakest link in your business. Stop that. Stop that right now. The reason we do this call every single Thursday, the reason Craig spends the entire afternoon of the first day at the super conference talking about conversion is because of the level of importance it plays in your business. You have to get killer good at this. Killer good.
Hey Rick, you kind of sound like a stern but loving parent.
Well, look, I hear the complaints sometimes. Well, Rick, I'm making all these calls and nobody's home and these leads suck. And look, you absolutely have to get good at this. I've had the privilege in Craig's organization of talking with people who felt this program wasn't a good mix for them. And here's what I can tell everybody on the call today. 100% of the people I talk to as they leave cannot do the universal callback script. An absolutely fundamental building block of this program, and they didn't take the time to learn it. And I said earlier, it's probably one of the top most important things you can learn, and they didn't take the time to learn it. So don't delegate this. Don't hire somebody from your local marketplace who has good phone skills. Don't do that yet. In time, as Craig just told you, we will teach you how to assign some of those calls to other people. But right now, you are the ISA in your business, and you better be good. You better be really good because your income depends on it.
Okay, well said. Now, as promised, we're going to do a role play with Elizabeth Kennedy. Elizabeth has been a member now for a while, and she's indicated that she wants to role play for a lead I have to contact right after this webinar. So, Andrea, can we get Elizabeth on?
Elizabeth, say hello.
Hello.
Good morning, or now good afternoon, Elizabeth.
No, it's still morning. You're calling California.
Yeah. Well, it's afternoon where I am, and I've got a little after 12 noon. Or Rick, I guess you're about quarter after 10.
Well, quarter after 9, Craig. I'm in Phoenix.
Quarter after 9. Okay. Oh, you're in Phoenix today. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, no matter what time it is for you, we're going to show you a role play. Now, Elizabeth, what type of prospect do you want me to be?
Okay. Well, can I just give you the scenario? Long story short.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is a lead I generated from one of my home evaluation postcards back in January. Okay, so and I've been following up with this lead every other week or so. He's telling me that call back in a week, call back in a month, this and that, this and that. So then I finally called. My last call was with him on April 1st. He said, call me back June 15th. So I said, fine.
What's the reason he's giving you for continually pushing you off?
Because he said he's got to refinance. I think his house is a little underwater. He bought it for like $600,000. And it's worth $4 something. So anyway, but then this is the kicker, Craig and Rick. I get a lead yesterday from Trulia. I have Trulia for my seller leads, and he went to Trulia to get another home evaluation. And then I called him.
I'm suspicious. I'm suspicious if he keeps putting you off and putting you off.
Yeah.
What we want to determine is this guy actually sincere about ever meeting with you? Right.
And then he's on Trulia lead. It says 1 to 3 months, and he told me on the other home evaluation went to my website, and he said 3 to 6 months. So now that was January. Now we're in April, right? So then I'm going to call him right after this because I did call him yesterday, and he said to me, okay, Liz, we'll talk tomorrow. So this is funny.
So here's what I think, Liz. I think he's probably being upfront with you about his timing, and I think he's getting closer now to the point where he's getting serious, so he's getting a couple of opinions. But now you have an advantage because you can actually talk to him, a warm body, plus you're going to make him an offer that he can't refuse when you up the offer of the simple CMA. You're going to make a better offer than Trulia or Zillow can do all day long. So this is good for you.
Right. What's funny, though, is that I wouldn't have known he was doing this unless I had the zip code for Trulia.
Here's something else which is interesting, Liz, and I'll just throw this in. If you were feeding this guy your monthly newsletter since January, he probably would have. So he's probably coming back to you through the articles in your newsletter and the hooks that you put in there as well. And that's why the newsletter that Craig designed is killer good for understanding the true motivation of a buyer or a seller. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So this is what it is. The role play, I kind of like to be, I would be Jeff Goodman, this is the guy, and you be me, because I'm trying to get what you would say to him.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go through that from the top. Ring. Hey, may I speak to Jeff, please?
Yeah, this is Jeff.
Hey, Jeff. Jeff, this is Elizabeth. I want to apologize for my deep voice. I've had a throat over the last week or so. But this is Elizabeth, and I've talked to you several times over the last couple of months, and you've indicated that you're going to be putting your home on the market in the next little while. I just wanted to reconfirm your timing on this. When is it that you're thinking of putting the home on the market?
Well, like I told you before, I've been thinking about selling it first. I'm a little closer now. So, but see, I'm been trying to refi it, and my house is not worth what I paid for it, and I'm not quite sure what to do.
Okay, and are you going to be moving out of the area or staying in the area?
Well, I already have a home in Newport Beach.
Okay. And do you have a realtor to get your home sold when the time is right?
Well, no, I've been thinking about using you.
Okay, that's the answer I want to hear. Now, is there anything holding you back from us getting together so I can give you a real accurate assessment as to what the house would sell for? Also, I can give you some tips on what to do and what not to do to prepare your home to sell it for the most amount of money. Plus, we could go through all your various closing costs, so you'll know exactly what you're going to net in your pocket once the dust settles. It's absolutely free of charge, and you're under no obligation to do anything. Does that sound like it might be helpful?
Yeah, because this has just really upset me that the value of my home's gone down so much. But.
Well, why don't we find out what the true value of your home is before we come to that conclusion?
Okay. That sounds like a good idea.
Very good.
All right. So, really, if the guy's thinking of selling his home and you can make this information sound really interesting, then if he's sincere about selling it, the answer should be yes. What's the downside? You're going to give your professional opinion on what his home is worth. He's on would you say Zillow or Trulia anyway, so we know he's obviously into that. He wants to know what his place is worth. He's concerned that he's upside down, so that can't hurt, having Elizabeth, the experienced realtor, come in and give her professional opinion. Also, you're going to give him tips on what to do and what not to do to sell his home for the most amount of money. He wants to know what he's going to net for sure. He wants to know whether he can sell it and what he's going to net. And you could talk about timing and answer any of your questions you have free of charge, never obligates you to do anything. Does that sound like it might be helpful? I think if you say it exactly like that, the answer will be yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a really good point.
Maybe you can help this guy. Maybe you can. Maybe you can't. Maybe he's upside down. Maybe you're going to have to do a short sale or something.
You know, Elizabeth, there's a really good thing that Craig said in there, and everybody should write this down. Because here's what happens when a seller lead gets generated. We create what we call the area sales report. We send that to the prospect. And what is the area sales report? The truth is, it's the same thing practically they can get from Zillow or Trulia. It's just an overview of what's happening in the market. So that's my mindset. Now, Craig calls, and what does Craig do? He contrasts what he's going to do for this seller versus what the seller has already done now. And the words Craig used, and everybody write this down, would you like an accurate assessment as to what your home will actually sell for in this current market? Man, I'm telling you guys, that is $1 million question when the prospect says to Craig, oh, well, Craig, let me look at what you've sent me already. Let me look at what you sent me, and I'll make a decision from that. And Craig's response is what? Well, what I've sent you is just a printout of recent sales and current listings in the neighborhood. But since you're thinking of making a move in the next couple of months, I would assume you're looking for a much more accurate assessment as to what your home would actually sell for in this market. Wow. That's a complete contrast from what they're doing or what they're getting now to what they really need. And you have to learn that in this seller script. And Craig did a really good job of it right there.
Okay, I've got some questions here. They're really objections, how to handle objections. Okay. So Deborah Lopez is asking, Craig and Rick, how do you overcome commission objections? You know, like, they're talking to a discounter. Here's how we're going to, first of all of the commission stuff is better handled in person than over the phone.
Face-to-face, yep.
Right, face-to-face. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a net sheet, and we're going to show you how to use statistics to kill your competition. So one of the stats that, now think about this. Now that you've got all these seller leads coming in, it makes sense, right? If you could pick and choose who you're going to work with, you would choose to work with the most sincere, the most realistic sellers, sellers that will listen to you on price, which means the house will sell, and it will probably sell close to the asking price, which means, Deborah, your list-to-sales ratio is higher than the board average. Imagine sitting down with that seller that's all focused on commission, and you're able to say, well, look, here's a bar graph that shows my listings so far in 2015 have sold for 99% of the asking price, but the board average here in our county is only 97%. So I know the other realtor told you they would do it for 1% less, but let's focus on who's going to net you the most amount of money instead of who's, instead of what agents are charging.
Right.
Isn't that what's most important, is who's going to get you the most in your pocket after the commission? Now, if they're after you about commission on the telephone, so sometimes, they're going to ask you right on the telephone, well, what's your commission? What's your commission? Rick, what do you charge? They're all about commission. Here's how I handle that. I say, Rick, I haven't seen your home yet. So Rick, I could ask you a whole bunch of questions, and you could answer, you could handle that objection with, I don't know, I haven't seen your home yet. So let me demonstrate this. So Rick, what do you think you would list my home at?
Well, Craig, I can't say at this point because I haven't actually seen your home yet. So
well, what
would be a good
what commission do you charge, Rick?
Well, again, Craig, I haven't seen your home yet, so I'm not sure what's all involved. What would be a good time?
How long do I have to commit to? How long does the listing period have to be?
Well, again, Craig, in light of the market, I'd need to have a quick look at your home, and then I can answer that question for you. What's your schedule like this afternoon?
Okay, so that's the point, is we want to get face-to-face because all these objections are handled better face-to-face. So Rick basically answered every one of those common objections with, I don't know, I haven't seen your home yet, which kind of makes sense, right? Okay, Here's a question from Julia. Very common question. You know, when we ask them in the script, do you have a question? Do you have an agent? Do you have an agent to help you when the time is right? What if they say yes? What if the seller says, yeah, in fact, I do have an agent in mind. You know, I am committed to an agent. Here's what I'm going to say. Rick, are you 100% committed to that agent? Because, you know, there's a tremendous difference between what agents do and how much they charge to get the job done. Do you think you might be open to meeting with me as well? Now, I'm not telling Rick not to meet with other agents, but I'm opening Rick's mind to the possibility that maybe it is true. And it is, right? There is a tremendous difference between what agents do and how much they charge to get the job done. Now, what the prospect doesn't know is I'm probably going to charge more than the other realtors, but we're trying to create massive doubt. And then I say it's absolutely free of charge and no obligation to meet with me. Do you think you might be interested in meeting with me as well? Boom. Especially if they say, well, you know, Rick, I'm going to be listing with my next door neighbor or a friend or a relative. I would say, Rick, you know, you perhaps feel obligated to list with your friend, your coworker, your coworker's wife, your next door neighbor, your relative, whoever. But there is a tremendous difference between real estate agents and what they do and how much they charge to get the job done. Would you be interested to meeting with me as well? You know, it's no cost or obligation. And after you meet with me, if you don't feel that I could do a better job for you or I would be a better option for you, then by all means, list with your friend, your relative, your coworker, your neighbor, or whatever. And you'll feel good about that because at least you've known, you've done your research.
Right.
However, if you don't meet with me and you just list with your next door neighbor, you're always going to be kind of wondering, right, is there another realtor that maybe could have done more? In other words, choosing your realtor just because he's your next door neighbor may not be the best way to do this, right? Would you choose a heart surgeon just because he lived next door to you? So we'll show you folks how to handle the objections. And the thing is we want it to be easy, right? We're going to get objections. As I mentioned earlier, there's only about, I don't know, 8 or 9 common objections you're going to hear over and over again. Yep. You know, Rick, when you ask that question, do you folks have a realtor to help you when the time is right? And they say, actually, Rick, yeah, we do. You're not all bent out of shape by that.
Oh, no,
you're not surprised, shocked. You're not falling off your chair. You know exactly how you're going to respond to that.
When I ask the question, I'm prepared for the response. I'm prepared that, you know, there's no shortage of realtors. They may have talked to one. They may have kind of got one in mind, so I've just got to deal with that. That's all. It's really simple.
And we're not going to get everybody to say yes. Look, if the guy's brother, sister, father is a realtor,
it's not going to happen.
They're 100% committed to their family member, I get that. And what that should tell us is there's no matter what we do or say, they're not going to meet with us. So we should just get off the phone as quickly as possible and call the next prospect in your huge pile of leads. Remember, I'm going to repeat it again, you won't be able to work with them all anyway. So
hey, Craig,
we'd rather know from the onset. We would rather know right away whether they're going to waste our time, whether they're sincere, whether they're qualified. We want to know that right from the get-go because we can't work with them all.
It's interesting, Craig. I have a funny story about that. A young gal who's worked with me for over 10 years, her name is Stacy. She's really good with the script. And when she hears that a prospect wants to work with a friend or a relative, she actually sometimes says, well, are you sure you want to put a friendship in jeopardy? What if you have to fire your friend as a realtor? Whoa, kind of a bold question, but she says she's comfortable enough with the script that she can ask that. That's right. Yep.
Okay, Sandra Park is asking about the buyer coming into the office. Does that do you mandate that every time, or can you meet them at a neutral space like a coffee house? Okay, so here's how this works, Sandra, for both Rick and I and all of our members. If they own a home, we always want the appointment at their house because in addition to getting the buyer contract signed, maybe we can get the listing contract signed. If it's a first-time buyer, I always want them to come to my office. Yep. So does Rick. It's just an extra hoop we jump them through. Now, Would we ever meet at a coffee shop? I suppose in this situation I might. Let's say, Rick, that the buyer is an hour away from your office. They're renting, and they say, hey, Rick, you know what? You're in Calgary, and we're whatever would be an hour away from you, and that's a long drive. You know, so in other words, it's too far to come and meet with you. You might, as a compromise, say, well, why don't we meet, you know, right in between where you live and my office at the local Starbucks at the corner of such and such.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Craig, I don't do that. Here's the simple reason. I don't have what I need at Starbucks. Yes, I can bring a laptop. Yes, I can bring some stuff. Think of it this way, guys, and I know where we're going. I'm going to get lots of emails later. How many of you would think if you're in big trouble and you hired a lawyer that he'd offer to meet you at Starbucks? How many of you, if you needed to go and see the doctor and the doctor's too far away, how many of you think the doctor's going to come and meet you halfway? He's not. Okay, those are professionals. They have a set way of working in the community. I'm a professional. If the buyer isn't selling first, they come to my office. If the buyer is selling first, I go to their home. That's the way we've done it from day one. So that's my answer to your question, Craig. You're correct. You might find a title office where you can share or use their boardroom. In Canada, you might have an attorney, friend of yours, who has a boardroom you can borrow. But at every chance I can, I'm going to bring a buyer into my office because all the resources I need are there. And it's a professional setting.
All right, one final question before we wrap this up. But don't anyone go anywhere because I want to talk about what's going to happen tomorrow. This is from Chris Cornell. Chris is asking, hey, is there an auto response prepared or generated area home sales report on the CP website or on my Success website, or do I need to pull the manual CMA? Okay, so if they're requesting an online home evaluation or an area home sales report, that's something manually that you're going to want to pull off, Chris. You or one of your assistants are going to want to take the information that they've given you, right? They're going to tell you their address, their square footage, the style, the age of their home. That's all the information we're asking them. And then it doesn't have to be you. If you've got a trained administrative assistant, that's how it worked in my office and Rick's. We never did this. Our assistant, we trained them how to pull off the recent home sales and current listings. Okay, it's not that difficult, right? If they live on Maple Street, what we're asking them to do, our assistant, is to pull off what's currently listed on Maple Street and what's sold in the last 6 months. Then I'm going to call the prospect back and I say, hey, Rick, Craig Proctor here with ABC Realty. I received your request for the area home sales report. Just wanted to let you know we've sent that information out to you. And I wonder if you folks were planning on making a move in the next little while. And Rick, if Rick says, well, look, I didn't know this was coming from a real estate agent, I would say, yep, you visited my website. You gave me all the information. And if Rick answers the question, the prospect answers the question in such a way that leads me to believe that this is a seller that wants to list, I am going to try for an appointment. Now, sometimes, Chris, the seller will say, well, you know, like I thought you gave me everything I need over the phone. Like, why do you need to come over to my house? To which I'm going to say, well, Chris, it sounds like you're planning on making a move. And what I sent you is sort of a ballpark. You know, we sent you recent home sales and some of the homes that are currently listed. But I think you would agree there's a huge difference between homes even on the same street. So since you've indicated that you are thinking of making a move, I could give you a much more accurate assessment by dropping by and having a closer look at the home. And when I get there, I can give you some tips on what to do and what not to do to prepare your home for sale. We could go over a net sheet, answer any of the questions that you have, talk about timing. It's absolutely free of charge, and you're never obligated to do anything would that interest you. Now, here's the thing. The more interested the seller is in actually listing their home, the more they want your super accurate assessment and all the other benefits that I just articulated.
Right.
When they're not motivated, they'll say to you, hey, Rick, you know what? I'm good with just what you sent me. I'm good with the recent home sales and what's currently listed. I'm okay with the ballpark figure.
Yep.
So here's the key. Never offer to go over and meet with the seller until you've asked them the probing questions. Never invite yourself over to their home for the CMA, okay, for the listing appointment, whatever you want to call it, until you're sure they're motivated.
And selling, right.
And selling. You know, I talked about this at the super conference. Rick, you and I, all of us, have had the great joy of forcing our way into a home just to find out that the seller is not motivated at all. Now you've wasted an hour of your life, and you're sitting there with somebody that you know 5 minutes into the appointment, well, hey, this is a waste of time.
Yep.
So don't book it. Here's the key. You might want to write this down. Don't book an appointment just because you can. Only book an appointment because you should.
Right.
Rick and I and James McDonald, we're going to show you how to be so good with the universal callback script and the offers that you make to buyers and sellers. Most of you are going to be able to book appointments at will, but that doesn't mean you should. So we ask the qualifying questions first. We want to leverage our brains first, and then when we decide, hey, here's somebody that's really motivated in their timings now, then and only then are we going to make the offer to meet.
Hey, the other thing we should add here, Craig, to this question that was raised is don't overthink the stuff you're going to use to fulfill the request. I don't know if you need to prepare the big old 32-page MLS CMA because you simply got a request from a lead. I don't want you guys to put a whole lot of faith in what you're sending because that's false hope. What you're sending is not going to create a face-to-face appointment. You could have the most beautifully written cover letter, the most beautifully written email that goes with it. It's not going to get you an appointment.
Well, in fact, it can work against you. Check this out.
I was just going to say that.
If you're the seller and I send you, they requested an online home evaluation or area home sales report, and I send you 6 or 7 homes that are listed in the area and maybe 6 or 7 past sales. Now I can say, well, Rick, I've asked you the probing questions. It sounds like you're somebody that's going to be listing your home next for a while. One of the benefits to getting together is I can give you a more accurate assessment.
Right. Very important.
If I've given you a ton of information, you might be thinking, well, you don't even need to meet with the real estate agent. You've got so much information that it actually negates any value in meeting with the realtor.
Price per square footage, all that jazz. This is the wrong time to present that information. Here's what we want to do. We want to create that offer that's an offer in contrast. The contrast is, here's what we've sent you, which will give you sort of a ballpark figure is what similar homes are selling for. But based on the fact you are thinking of selling, I'm going to assume you're looking for a much more accurate assessment as to what your home would sell for. Man, guys, if you can just learn that line and don't get all freaked out about what you send. Craig said it earlier. In his office and also in my office, I never saw what went out. I paid no attention to what went out because it didn't do anything in the process. It simply let me keep my promise. But me getting on the phone, that's where I made good money in real estate because I got really good at converting those requests for information on the value of my home into a face-to-face appointment. And just so we're all clear here, the face-to-face appointment to fulfill the request for an evaluation is called a listing appointment. Okay, that's what this is. We don't go over to disseminate information about the property then leave. We're coming over because this person has answered those probing questions correctly, and we are coming over to list that home, and that's our goal.
Okay, so what Rick is saying is what you send them is never going to really compel them to list their home or call and say, come and get me. It's what you say over the phone. So we'll talk more about really what we're offering here are 2 things. We're offering free special reports, right, which we offer you on the coaching website. We'll show you tomorrow exactly how to access all this. We're going to show you tomorrow how to access the ads, the special reports, the landing page, the websites, answer all your questions about lead generation. That's what tomorrow is all about. It's all about lead generation. Today was all about what to do with the leads. Tomorrow is all about, well, how do I get the leads in the first place? Right. Okay, so mark your don't miss tomorrow's call. It's going to be really good. It's a webinar, actually. Okay, so don't miss it. 8 a.m. on the Pacific Coast, on the West Coast. It's going to be 11 a.m. on the East Coast, and we're going to spend an hour and a half talking to you about lead generation. So we had a very good, I think, a very good session here today. So we'll let everybody get out there and sell some real estate, make some money, and we'll see everybody tomorrow morning. Rick and Andrew, thanks as always for doing a great job, and that concludes today's Role Play webinar. Thank you.